It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
Or .606 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. It is a Friday, and I am so glad that you made it, which means it's open phones all the way. Now, I always give you open phones every day at some point, but Friday, it's the entire program. What I'm doing is what I call house cleaning. There's a lot of topics that I have to get through to the end of the program in order to clear the way so you can have a restful weekend and not worry about stuff anymore, which, by the way, this morning's news was filled with a lot of polls. Ignore them. Polls are garbage. Even if they say what you want them to say. That's just meaning that there's not a whole lot out there, so the media thinks, to talk about, so they're filling the time with polls. There actually is a whole lot to talk about. That's what I have lined up for you this morning. So 888-97 Woods, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. So the first story, now, this is one of those contradictions that I wonder, when people contradict themselves like this, do they hear themselves? I'm not sure that they do. Let's take a look at it. The U.S. has been, says the story, in perpetual national emergency mode since September 11, 2001. So every single year they renew that. We're still in terrorism mode, waiting for the next attack, according to your federal government, according to the FBI and other such agencies. This is what they're looking for. President Joe Biden on Wednesday extended that executive order that was first put in place by President George W. back on September 23rd, 2001. The White House issued a notice, continuum of national emergency with respects to persons who commit, threaten to commit, or support terrorism. And it was an executive order signed by Joe Biden. And then it talks about, maybe I'll get into what the law relates to and what they intend to do about that. So my first thought when I read this is, hold on a second. If the president every year signs an executive order extending that original executive order, which means Biden has now done it 4 times, then why leave the border open? If you're really worried about terrorism, if you're really worried about it, then why just leave the border open? And not just the southern border. Border with Canada's open, plenty coming in. And the Biden administration has actually gone to other countries with airplanes, jet planes, loaded up illegal immigrants and flown them in. So if you're really worried about terrorism, then why leave the borders open like this? Which is where I step back and ask the question, do they really know what they're doing? Are they paying attention? When someone does something like this, do they not connect the dots? And if not, why not? Because it's immediately, if I were president, and God help us, you don't want that. If I were president and I saw that I had an executive order to sign to extend what happened on 9/11, to keep us in that mode of we're watching out for terrorists, who knows when we're going to get hit. Someone's going to try. And think about this. Since 2001, since September 11, 2001, your FBI and CIA and so on, local law enforcement as well, they've actually thwarted quite a few attempted terrorist attacks. And if you're wondering what, if you go back in the news, you'll find there are multiple cases where your different law enforcement agencies at many different levels have found terrorist activity in the United States and shut it down before they had a chance to do anything. It has happened many times. That's why these presidents continue to assign that executive order. If that's the case, if it's such a worry to Biden, then why is the border open? Knowing full well that terrorist activity has crossed our border. In fact, it's been reported by every news organization or so-called news organization out there. Now, reading on to the story, the law relates to and this is a quote, "The unusual and extraordinary threat to the nation, our security, foreign policy, and the economy of the United States, constituted by the grave acts of terrorism and threats of terrorism committed by foreign terrorists, including the attacks on September 11th in New York and Pennsylvania and against the Pentagon. And the United States continuing," and, well, it goes on about the threats and so on. The order continues the executive order signed by the first former president. Also, even Donald Trump signed it. The executive order was signed to strengthen and consolidate sanctions, combat continuing threats posed by international terrorism, and to take additional steps to deal with the emergency. I have an additional step you can take: close the border. It states that those who commit or threaten to commit or support terrorism continue to pose an unusual and extraordinary threat to national security, foreign policy, and the economy of the United States. The White House says national security threat is ongoing since 2001. Biden is adopting measures to deal with that emergency. He extended the national emergency and other orders beyond September 23rd, 2024 for one more year, as every other president has done. And it talks about where this order has been published, et cetera, et cetera. It also talks about the Canadian border, our southern border. It does talk about our borders in the executive order. So once again, as the president signed this executive order, I have to ask him the question: did it then, Mr. President, when you signed it the first 3 times, dawn on you that maybe you want to secure our borders? And not just let people in. And we know that they've been doing. They let people in, they go through the motions of processing them, and then turn them loose into the country. And we have no idea where most of these people have gone. So if there are terrorist cells in the country, and most people that I talk to think that there has to be, I'm one of those who thinks somewhere out there, yeah, there's definitely more than one. What they're working on, what they're trying to get down, I don't know. Some have been captured and sent back across the border or dealt with. That has happened over the past couple of years. And if you don't know the stories, then just go back and search in the news. There's some reminders back there of some terrorist activity that has been stopped in our country, even within the past couple of years. The reason why it hasn't made big news is because we do have, again, an FBI and a CIA and local law enforcement, et cetera, that has found threats and put a stop to it. But you know that old saying, we have to be right every single time. They only have to be right once. All they have to do is get through once. They keep trying until eventually something gets through. So for those who have wondered when's the next terrorist attack going to happen, at some point, it will at some point. But I would say mostly because we've just left this border open and invited anybody just to come walking on in. And those who would like to do damage to us, of course, are going to take advantage of that. It's just a matter of when they finally make their move. So thank you, Mr. President, for signing the executive order. Too bad you're not actually going to do anything to enforce that executive order to make the American people safer. And I would say the same thing for Kamala Harris. She would probably sign as president that executive order again, but would she do anything to actually enforce it? And I think we already know the answer to that. 6:15 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Glenn Woods. He talks to you, not at you. Be part of the show at 888-97-WOODS. This is Wake Up Wyoming on K2 Radio.
6:22 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. 888-97-WOODS, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. So if you're just joining me, where I started was an executive order that's been signed every president since September 11, 2001. It's an executive order that extends national security operations because of terrorism. And President Biden just re-upped it again, like every president has. And if you go through and take a look at what's in there, take a look at it, you'll see that there's supposed to be the president as well as agencies of the federal government protecting us against possible influx of terrorism into the United States for all sorts of reasons. Not just that people may die, but economic reasons, all sorts of damage that can be done. And I'm all for the president re-signing that. Unfortunately, how does he do that when he's left the borders completely open at the same time? Now, on that note, headline, former Border Patrol chief tells Congress, Biden and Harris told me ixnay on the SIAs. So, generally, an SIA is a non-U.S. person who, based on analysis and travel patterns, potentially pose a national security threat. Often such individuals or group are employing travel patterns known and evaluated to possibly have a nexus of terrorism. In other words, are they going to places where they might be getting terrorist training? Keep an eye on those people. Who are they calling? Keep an eye on those people. So the analysis includes an examination of 4 patterns, points, and origins, and or travel segments that are tied to current assessments of national security threat environments. This does not mean that all SIAs are terrorists, but rather that their travel and behavior is a bunch of red flags. The term SIA does not indicate any specific derogatory information. Just take a look at what this person's doing, who they're hanging out with, what countries they're going to. Sometimes that's a red flag. So it sounds like people one would necessarily want to keep track of, right? Okay, now, just imagine if Biden told Harris and agents working on the border not to release the correct numbers of illegal aliens walking across the border, and especially if anyone's a national security threat. Just entertain that thought for a moment. Put your tinfoil hat on. So here's a gentleman who was speaking yesterday, a Border Patrol sector security chief, testifying in front of Democrats and Republicans, that he was directed not to release any information on the increase of significant interest migrants, what they call illegal aliens, with what they think may have ties to terrorism. Don't let that information out. Here's a quote. At the time, I was told I could not release any information on the increase in SIAs or mention any of the arrests. The administration was trying to convince the public that there was no threat on the border. The number of arrests of such individuals in the San Diego sector increased from 10 to 15 before 2021 to more than 100 in 2022. He says, and a quote again, once word was out that the border was far easier to cross in San Diego, it went to over 100 in 2022. Well, that's over in 2023, even that, so even more in 2023. Wonder what it is now. He added that he had let people who crossed the border illegally into local communities that could not support them, he said. San Diego County's supervisor, who also testified at the hearing, has criticized that action at times because of what it's been doing to his city of San Diego. So, or as he said in the movie, San Diego is how you're supposed to pronounce it. Well, this is what I was talking about earlier about signing an executive order saying you're going to protect the... And by the way, with this testimony that I just read, I would love to know what national news outlets are covering it, because it really makes Biden-Harris look bad. And there should be wall-to-wall coverage of this. The story says the former top Border Patrol agent for the San Diego area testified at a hearing on the border crisis that pimps were taking advantage of young female migrants as they were released into shelters. Quote, they were given a phone number to call, and then a recruiter would come down from Oakland or Los Angeles and pick them up. These young women were then brought up and forced into prostitution. He also told lawmakers he didn't have the proper resources to follow up on trafficking victims because, quote, we were inundated with so many people, there's no way we could follow up. San Diego's supervisor, the county supervisor, said about 115,000 migrants were dropped off on county streets from September 2023 to June 2024 after crossing illegally, and he said, this is not an isolated incident. This is a daily reality in San Diego County Border Patrol because they're the Uber driver for the city of San Diego. Basically, Border Patrol has become Uber drivers for these people, is what he's saying. So let's go back to where I started with all of this. So the president signs an executive order that every president since George W. has signed, making sure that we are covered, we are taken care of, that the nation is secure from terrorism. And yet, what is he doing about it exactly, our president? Except leaving an open border and telling Homeland Security and Border Patrol not to release the true numbers. Now that the media knows this, what will they do with this story? Coming up on 6:30, local news coming your way after local news update on the weather forecast. You and I get back into it again. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97 WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Cure, covering world-ending catastrophes for years to come. It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Find content, chat live, and listen on demand on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app.
6:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. So Miss Mary sent me something. The first question was, did I see Kamala Harris on Oprah? And the answer is, well, no. Not only was I busy yesterday, I don't really want to watch the whole thing. I probably would have, though, if I had a bit more time to watch bits and pieces of it. But the audio, and I wish I could play this on the air right now, but the audio that she sent me had to do with questions about guns. Because as Kamala Harris tries to reposition herself, forget what we know of what she's said and done during her entire life. We have to see a new Harris just for the election. So believe what you see now. Forget anything you've seen in the past, because that can't define her now, right? It doesn't matter. She's completely changed within the last few months, so that's what you believe. And so the question came up about guns, in which case Harris said, well, I'm a gun owner, and if somebody came into my house, broke into her house basically, they're going to get shot. Okay. Hands up for those people who believe that. Anybody? Yeah. If they do get shot, it's going to be because of the Secret Service. And she's going to have that Secret Service protection around her for life, but it's going to be because of Secret Service. Now, if her and her husband ever did own guns before she became vice president, it's because that they were afraid and thought that they needed guns. There have been many Democrats. Dianne Feinstein was one of them. Dianne Feinstein, when she was alive, was extremely anti-gun, very anti-gun. And then it was found out one day she carries a gun. And the reason is because she has had threats against her life, and she became afraid, and so she began carrying a gun everywhere. Well, hold on, Congresswoman Feinstein. It's not okay for everybody else out here to do that, but you get to, okay, I see. And same thing when it comes to the president or governors and et cetera. But they have security around. There's one congresswoman, I'm forgetting her name right now, there's a congresswoman who has paid for security around her. And yet, again, Democrat congresswoman in the House of Representatives, very anti-gun. But people point out, hey, don't you have a bunch of armed security around you all the time? Now, what about people who cannot afford armed security? Whether it's a single person or maybe they have a family that they want to take care of, or whatever it might be. Don't have the money to hire armed security guards to hang out with them all day, 24/7. So what do? Well, they go out and get a gun for self-defense. So for Democrats out there, they understand, of course, Kamala has to say all the right things to try to get that middle America vote, especially the rural vote. At the same time, they're as anti-gun as it gets. But it's election time. So say whatever you got to say. Right. But it really comes down to not just the hypocrisy for election time, but hypocrisy in general, if she really is a gun owner. And let's not forget, now she was talking about assault weapons, what she sees them as assault weapons. But AK-47 and AR-15 style weapons, she wants a forced gun buyback. So, which is unconstitutional, but she has, you're going to be, and somehow they're going to come up with enough money to do this. She wants everybody to sell their guns to the government, so nobody owns those guns anymore, and we're all going to be forced to do it. Now, if that's the case, the criminal element out there, especially nutballs who do want to commit mass murder with one of these guns, do you think that they're going to go and take the money and turn their guns in because they are law-abiding citizens and they're going to do the right thing by obeying the law? So who's going to be left with the guns if that's the case? Right, well, obviously you know the answer to that. So it really is entertaining for me. I did, Mary, when you sent me those two videos, I watched them during the news and information break. And it really is interesting to see Harris acting in a whole new way now. Oh, I'm a gun owner. If they come into my house, they're going to get shot. Happy to say that while she's running for president because she wants that middle-class, middle America vote. She wants to make sure that rural America sees her as a tough, gun-toting woman that would defend her house. Now, again, hands up how many people out there really believe that. Didn't think so. Just something that's being said because she's running for office and she needs to position herself in that way. But if you go back and look at what she said before she was running for president, exactly the opposite of that. Interesting how anybody who does run for political office will put aside anything, any hint of who they really are, to present themselves to a public in the way that they think would be most appealing. Not remembering that, especially in this day and age, we can look up things that they've said in the past. We have the audio, we have the video. We can look it up anytime we want. 6:42 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
And we're back. Sorry, we were busy tricking pescatarians into eating Rocky Mountain oysters. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
6:49 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Off we go to Frank Antonino to talk sports. Okay, Frank. The first player to get 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases in one season.
Shohei Ohtani from the Los Angeles
I'm so glad
Dodgers.
you pronounced that name because I wasn't going to be able to.
He went, and this is the first time that's ever been done by one player in one season, 50 home runs and 50 stolen bases. And he drove in 10 runs in that game against Miami and was 6 for 6. Here's a guy that signed a free agent deal, and he's also a pitcher but has not pitched this year. He is the finest all-around player in the game today. And he's engaging, has a lot of endorsement deals. Everyone likes the guy. It's amazing. And he hasn't even pitched. He's just been hitting. He's fantastic. He's absolutely fantastic. Good for him.
So if this guy keeps this up, we're going to see like Hall of Famer stuff.
Oh,
right?
yeah. He's well on his way to that because prior to signing with the Los Angeles Dodgers, he played with the Los Angeles Angels, and he was great there too. Guys, and he has a tremendous following, and it normally sometimes when Asian players come over and they make big bucks, the Asian media is all over these guys. I mean, they literally follow him every game. He's handled everything perfectly. He even had a guy embezzle some of his money and handle that perfectly. What a game!
Yeah,
I mean,
I would hope called the mob to deal with him.
Well,
so how do you pronounce his name again?
Shohei Ohtani.
Okay. Again, I'm glad you did that. I was going to flunk that test. Yeah. Okay.
I may have flunked it, but I think that's his name. Yeah, Shohei Ohtani. He's fantastic. Fantastic game. A memorable game of epic proportions. Epic.
Huh? Go ahead with sports.
All right, high school football around the state. In the big game in 4A, we'll have number 1 Sheridan hosting number 2 Cheyenne East. Both teams are 3-0. Sheridan is going for their 35th straight win that would set the Wyoming all-time record in that category. That'll start at 6 o'clock. In Casper, 4th-rated Natrona at 2-1 will take on 3rd-rated Campbell County. That will start at 7 o'clock. Campbell County's 3-0 and Natrona's 2-1. Kelly Walsh at 2-1 will be on the road at Thunder Basin, who's 0-3. And Cheyenne South will be at Cheyenne Central. Both teams are 0-3. Laramie with little momentum now after a win last week over Central. They'll have that long road trip down I-80. They'll be in Rock Springs. Both teams are 1-2. In Class 2A, Burns will be at Glen Rock, and Glen Rock's homecoming game tonight. Pine Bluffs will be at Wright and 1A 6-man, and then this afternoon at 1 p.m., Big West will be at KC. In college football, the Wyoming Cowboys will have another chance for victory number 1 as they take on North Texas in Denton tomorrow night. Folks are 0-3 after a 20-point loss to BYU last week, and they're just not a good team right now. It's a collective effort to succeed or fail, and the coaches have to fix this team. Fix this team. The offense needs to stay on the field and keep the defense off the field. There needs to be game-breaking plays and game-breaking players, and the Cowboys need to play with an edge. North Texas is 2-1. They were destroyed by Texas Tech last week, but the Mean Green are favored by 9. We'll see how it goes. It's a 5 p.m. kickoff tomorrow night from Denton. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. In high school volleyball, it's the Casper Invite is starting this morning over the Ford Center in Casper. All 3 of the Cheyenne schools are there. The 2 Casper schools, Laramie, Douglas, Bighorn. It is a talented field of high school volleyball teams that will go out all day today and all day tomorrow. Yesterday, Natrona beat Evanston 3-1, and Kelly Walsh beat Riverton 3-1. In college volleyball, the University of Wyoming beat Coppin State 3-0 in their own tournament, so they're 7-2 on the year. They'll take on Albany at 6:30 tonight at the UniWyo gym. In junior college volleyball, Casper College with their home opener tonight. They'll take on NJC at 6 p.m. The Birds are 2-14 on the year, and they'll also host Miles City tomorrow at 2 p.m. NJC defeated LCCC in Cheyenne yesterday 3-0, so L-Trip is now 5-12 on the year. Cross country, the Douglas has a meet today with Douglas, Glen Rock, and Kelly Walsh. Loveland, Colorado with a meet. They will have Cheyenne East, Cheyenne South, and Laramie. Arvada West has a meet with Cheyenne Central in that deal. Sheridan has a meet tomorrow, and Natrona will be in that deal. Yesterday, Lander had a meet, and Lexi Longhurst of Kelly Walsh was the girls' winner, and Trajan Swalstead of Worland was the boys' winner. That's it in sports.
Lander was Frank going this weekend?
Well, let's see. I'll have the volleyball tournament today at the Ford Center. Then I'm going to run up to Sheridan to see if Sheridan's going to break that record. Then I'll be back and do more volleyball tomorrow. And yesterday was beautiful in Lander. I mean, it was just a really beautiful day.
Oh,
sunshine,
yeah.
and you were
Well,
just
in
there,
fact,
so you know how that is. It was perfect there, absolutely perfect.
Yes, and then driving all the way down to Cheyenne. Oh my Lord! Of course I always have to make my favorite stop in Chugwater.
Of course, yeah.
And I get out of the car and I'm thinking, besides grabbing a burger and sitting inside, can I just sit out in their front patio here and have the burger? Because it was just nice yesterday.
Or
.06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. It's a Friday. I'm so glad that you made it. Before I get to the story I have lined up for you. Oh, by the way, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. That's 888-97-WOODS. And yeah, you can talk about what I'm talking about or change the subject. Either way, I'll just kind of roll with it. So before I have the topic that I have lined up for you, I want to just throw out something that I saw earlier this morning that still has me scratching my head. And the reason I want to talk to you about it is because it still has me scratching my head. But I want to hear what you think about this. So today I'm broadcasting from the studios of KGAB, which is the radio station in downtown Cheyenne, Wyoming. And I'm up on, it's the A&B Bank building. So I'm up on the 3rd floor of what's a 5-story building. And we have these nice windows that look down on Capitol. That's the street that runs up and down our avenue between the Capitol building and all the way down to the old train station or the depot, if you will. Beautiful street. So normally when I work, I just kind of mow through everything until I'm done, until the end of the day. But I did have a point where I was beyond caught up and decided I'm going to go stretch my legs. And I walk up to the corner of the building on the third floor there, and I look out. The windows are corner windows, so I can look down, not just on the street corner, which is 20th Street and Capitol, but that gives me a view of the Capitol itself. But also I can see up and down a good portion of 20th Street and up and down a good section of Capitol. Now, it's like 4:30 a.m., right? And there's a guy who's just walking up Capitol, toward the Capitol. He gets to the intersection of Capitol and 20th, and he stops because the traffic light is ticking away. The pedestrian walk light is red, and it's ticking away, showing him numbers, how long he has until it changes to give him a green light to cross. 19, 18, 17, 16. He's just standing there, and I'm thinking, really? It's 4:30 a.m. I can see up and down this intersection here. There's nobody here. Nobody. He waits, though. He waits until it gets to 0, and then you see they have a guy, outline or silhouette of a guy in green lights that appear, giving him permission to walk across 20th. When he gets across the street, he stops right there, makes a left-hand turn. And I'm thinking, oh, God, he's going to do the same thing for Capitol? Because now he's across one part of the corner, he's going to cross the other part of the corner. So now he's made a left turn, and he's standing at Capitol. And he's waiting on that one. 20, 19, 18. Waiting for the timer to get down to 0 and the little green guy to appear, giving him permission to cross Capitol. 5, 4, 3. Finally, it turns into the little green guy, giving him permission to cross the street, and he does. And again, I'm thinking, it's 4:30 in the morning. There's absolutely nobody here. Now, I know there are people who love to follow the rules. For me, at that time of the morning, I would have just stepped out and thought, well, I want to get from this side to that corner. And I wouldn't have just jaywalked. I mean, I would have completely cut the corner in the middle of the road without even looking at the lights. Yes, my head would be on a swivel looking for any traffic, even if it is 4:30 in the morning. But since there's nobody there, I would have just walked across. Forget street corners even. I'll just do it at an angle. That's okay, because there's nobody here. Now, if you see me, and I have done this because I've been here many times before, at that same intersection during the course of the day, when it's really busy out there, oh, you better believe I use those crosswalk lights and I still don't trust that people are going to stop when they have to stop. So even though the light tells me it's okay to go, I don't trust that it's going to stop traffic. So my head's on a swivel as I cross the road. Both roads, in fact. Okay, so I'll definitely obey the rules and still watch out for those people who don't at that time of the morning, or that time of the afternoon, I should say. But early, about 4:30 in the morning when nobody's there, why? I'm still sitting here scratching my head going, why didn't he just keep going? Why did he stand there and wait for both those crosswalk lights to give him permission? So are you the kind of person that would just, at 4:30 in the morning, just cut the corners and walk across like me and not worry about it because nobody's out there? Or are you the kind of person like this guy who it doesn't matter what time of day or night, you're going to follow the rules even if nobody's there? Just asking the question. All right, now, since I mentioned something I saw in Cheyenne, if all works well, our man in Cheyenne, Doug Randall, might join me later this morning. He was telling me about a story, and some of you in Cheyenne were asking me about this yesterday. I was getting notes on the Wake Up Wyoming app about it. I had heard about this from Doug last week, but he didn't really have all the details until now. So they're in Cheyenne is City Drug. There's only a couple of independently owned drugstores in Cheyenne. And Doug's headline is City Drug Supporter enraged when Pharmacy Board refuses public comment. So Doug writes, supporters of City Drug were enraged on Wednesday afternoon when the State Pharmacy Board refused to take public comment on a suspension of the pharmacy's license. The board last week handed down a suspension of the drugstore's pharmacy license for allegedly violating a much broader issue in March. According to the minutes of the meeting, City Drug was ordered to stop compounding. I can't pronounce it. Anyway, there was something they were basically doing wrong in the pharmacy, and Doug will explain in detail what it is. But they were asked to stop. The order was issued because City Drug allegedly compounded the drug without the required sterile equipment, is the Reader's Digest version of it. According to the paperwork in the case, City Drug allegedly violated the order by compounding prescriptions from their South Street pharmacy in Wheatland earlier this month. The board suspended City Drug's resident pharmacy license September 12th, with the suspension taking effect on October 10th. That suspension is not permanent, but will remain in effect until a case hearing can resolve the matter. So, at a pharmacy, and this is where it gets really interesting here, at a pharmacy board meeting Wednesday, the board president told a standing room only crowd that the pending case hearing on the issue would be inappropriate to take public comment at that time, probably for legal reasons. That didn't go over well with the crowd members who said they were told they'd be allowed to comment. When the board returned after a break, upon gaveling the meeting back into session, City Drug supporter had been addressing the crowd and speaking. Wyoming Highway Patrol troopers forcibly removed the woman from the meeting. She was apparently yelling, "Get your hands off me," the whole time this happened. Supporters of the pharmacy at Wednesday's meeting told Town Square Media the pharmacy owner was not at fault and had done everything requested by the board. That's where we are right now. The meeting got really heated and really interesting. So again, I'm in part addressing that because our man in Cheyenne, Doug Randall, last week was telling me about it, but didn't have enough detail to really go into what was going on. Now he does, and he's written the story. And he wants to get in here maybe later on this morning to talk to us about it. All right. And plenty of people commenting on the citizen crossing the street, and I'll go ahead and get to that next because that, I think, is the most interesting question of the morning. 7:15 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Wake Up Wyoming goes anywhere you do with the Wake Up Wyoming app. Free download for Apple and Android. This is K2 Radio.
Research to help you take control of the situation with your family and manage the disease together. If you or your family are noticing changes, it could be Alzheimer's. Talk about seeing a doctor together. Visit alz.org/time to talk. A message from the Alzheimer's Association and the Ad Council.
7:21 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Phone number to get involved is 888-97-WOODS. That's 888-97-WOODS. And it was going to get a lot of response to this. And you can call in on this, too, if you want to talk about it. So here, to me, is the item worth noting for the day, just because it was driving me kind of nuts. I just have questions. For those who just heard the story, let me recap real quick. I am at the studios of KGAB Radio in downtown Cheyenne, Wyoming. And from high up in the building here, I can look down on a corner window. It's literally a window that is on a corner. And I can see Capitol Avenue and 20th. And at 4:30 this morning, I watched a gentleman walk up on the sidewalk following Capitol until he got to 20th. And he stood there and waited for the pedestrian light to count all the way down to 0. And then he crossed on the green pedestrian light. And then he turned because now he wants to cross Capitol. And he waits till the light goes all the way down to 0 from 20. And then turns green so he can walk across that. And I'm thinking, it's 4:30 in the morning and there's literally nobody out there. Nobody. Anywhere. Why are you standing there waiting for the lights? Were it me, if I wanted to cross both streets like that, I would have just cut across at an angle, just keeping an eye out for any traffic that might show up at 4:30 in the morning, but probably won't. But I just would have cut across it because, look, during the day when it's busy, I'll pay attention to those lights because it's a lot of traffic down there. But at 4:30 in the morning? So Milo in Fort Danger, that man is not in a rush. Mike from Leeds, South Dakota. Was he wearing a mask? Now, I didn't see a mask on him, but I wouldn't doubt, because, the maskers out there, a Karen or a Kevin, I guess, they're out alone walking at 4:30 in the morning. There's nobody out there, and they're still wearing a mask. And if you think, well, who's really going to? I have seen that. There's nobody around, and they're still wearing. All right, next one. Kent in Cheyenne asks, was there any harm done? And no, there wasn't. So if that's what this guy wants to do, to follow the rules to the letter like that, there's no harm done, and he's certainly welcome to do it. I'm just confused and scratching my head because I'm the guy who's, okay, I need to get over to that corner over there. And I'm just cutting at an angle across the street, and I'm not waiting on any damn lights because it's 4:30 a.m. and there's nobody out there. Yes, my head will be on a swivel looking for any cars that might show up, but I don't expect them to anyway. But no harm was done. Travis is in Casper. The gentleman was not following the rules. He was buying time before going back home to his honey-do list from his wife. Yeah, he's taking the long way home, and his wife is probably named Karen. So he's really not interested in getting home anytime soon. I can buy that. Sheepdog in Casper. I returned from Germany in 1986 in Mesa, Arizona. I stopped at a traffic signal at 4 a.m., waited a few seconds, and saw nothing moving or living. I blew through the only to have a police officer sitting at the corner who pulled me over. Well, this is why I say you look around to see if there's anybody there, just to make sure you're safe, also to make sure there's no cops. But no, I would just cut across the corner. Troy is in Cheyenne. No, I don't wait for the light. I also don't wear a mask because our idiot governor thinks we're knuckleheads if we don't. Jeff in Casper just sent me this note. He is following the rules. Ha ha. Well, he is following the rule. And this is, again, look, if you're a rule follower, okay, I get it. But I have to ask, how far do you take it? Do you take it to absurd? Which is the point. I understand we have some rules for a reason, but first off, there are times that there's just too many rules. All right. There's also times when the rules don't apply. In this case, I don't think the rules apply because there's nobody there. There's even a parking lot that I'll pull into on a regular basis. I'll give you the Reader's Digest of this story. Because of the hours I keep, I get to work a little before 2 a.m. I know a lot of people gasp when I say that, but I like the hours and I like the work that I do. And so I show up and there's nobody here. And so and I'm not always at the same radio station. So there's a time that I pull in and there is a sign. Now, it's not a public sign put by the city. It's for a private parking lot. And it says that is an exit only. Okay, do not enter, exit only. Because they're trying to keep, during the day, traffic flowing through the parking lot. Enter here, leave here. If we all flow in the same direction, we don't get bottlenecked up. And I get that. I completely get it. But again, when I show up, and it's not even yet 2 o'clock in the morning, and there's nobody around, I just ignore that sign and I just blow right in because there's absolutely nobody in that parking lot. So it doesn't matter. So the question would be then, are you the kind of person, and this is, I'm a big rebel, right? No, this is not me being a rebel here. This is just the rule doesn't make sense at this time of the morning. But during the day, when that parking lot is busy, I absolutely do it the way they laid out because it makes total sense to go with the traffic flowing in a certain direction so we don't get all bottlenecked up. That's when it makes sense. So my question to you is then, let's say it's a good rule, for sake of argument. It's a good rule. Do you always follow it, or is there a time when you look at it and you think, yeah, but it doesn't make sense right now, so I'll skip it? See, I'm that guy. Then there are those people who, that's a rule, so I always follow the rule no matter what. It doesn't matter if anyone's here. It doesn't matter, like this pedestrian. It's 4:30 a.m. and there's nobody here. I'm going to follow the rule anyway because that's the rule. There are those people who live it that way. Which one are you? I would think, I'm just guessing here, that most listeners to a radio program like this are the kind of people who would say, well, there's nobody here, so don't worry about it. I would think most are. But I always notice it depends on who we're talking to. And I also wonder this. Was he standing there on the street corner waiting for those lights to change because he sensed that somebody was watching him? That would have been me, high up above in the bank building, looking down. He didn't know that I was there, but maybe he just sensed. I feel like I'm being watched. That could have been it. The hair on the back of his neck standing up. I just feel like I'm being watched. Maybe I should just stand here just in case. Somebody's watching me. I can't tell from where. Yeah, it's some jerk talk show host way up at the top of the building looking down on you. That's who. So don't worry about it. Coming up on 7:30, local news is coming your way. After local news, update on the weather forecast, and you and I get back into it. 888-97 Woods is the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. Oh, and at 7:45, the weekend forecast live with Mark Ure from Dayweather. We're going to talk about your extended forecast through the weekend, which looks really nice. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Some gasoline about to pass in the mail. It's all in the red. Let it go. Go, go, go. Go, go, go. Go, go, go. Let it go, let it go, let it go. Go, go, go. Go, go, go. Go, go, go. Let it go, let it go, let it go.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Join the conversation at 888-97-WOODS.
7:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Friday, and I'm glad you made it. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Phone number to get involved, 888-97-WOODS, 888-97-WOODS. I'm still getting more comments on the pedestrian, with several people telling me that they would have done what I would do, is just cross at an angle and not wait for those pedestrian lights at 4:30 in the morning when there's nobody there. But all right, we'll get back to that in a little bit. Here's another great one for you today. Now, there's all the regular news, which we'll get into during the course of this morning, the serious stuff. But this, and to me, is one of the greatest stories to pop up in weeks. So let's go back to the height of COVID, when politicians were telling us that we need to obey the COVID rules, and we're having people arrested if they didn't. And then we find out the politicians are breaking all of the rules, like Governor Gavin Newsom going to a party in a restaurant in a small private room where everybody's way too close together, nobody's wearing a mask. Anybody else would have been arrested for that, but it's okay for him to do it, and there's all sorts of excuses. All right, so in the UK, there was one politician, I think it was the Prime Minister, actually. It was one politician who was sneaking out to go see his mistress. So he's not supposed to be out there, supposed to be under lockdown. He's only supposed to stay with him and his wife, that's it. That's all he's approved for. But he was sneaking out and going across town to be with his mistress, intimately. Now, I bet you they were not wearing masks. I'm just tossing that out there. So, okay, here's the next one. New York City COVID czar. This is not just New York City. This is not the mayor. This is the COVID czar, as they're calling him, is bragging that he went to illegal orgies during COVID. Orgies. All right. You have to hand it to Steven Crowder, if you know who he is. He got a great scoop. Jay Varma ran New York City's COVID response, imposing some of the most draconian pandemic restrictions in the country. Very proud of his achievements in bullying New Yorkers to comply or else with all of his mandates. And yet, he admits years later that he was going to drug-fueled sex parties, orgies. You know, in the good old Greek and Roman kind of way during COVID, while he was having other people arrested for the same thing. Now, earlier in my little pedestrian discussion, I was talking about following the rules. One type of rule I don't follow. When those people who we have elected to be or even appointed, to be the rule makers, make a bunch of draconian rules, and then they don't follow those rules themselves, well, then neither am I. And that goes the same for the cult of climate change. When we see those people at the top of the cult of climate change and the draconian rules that they want us to follow, and yet they still fly in private jets, have multiple mansions, ride around in SUVs and limousines, but the rest of us are supposed to give up pretty much everything and hand over all sorts of power to them. Well, if you're not going to follow the rules, neither am I. How about that? You're the rule maker. So if you're the rule maker, then you are going to have to lead by example. So Al Gore, Leonardo DiCaprio, Barack Obama, Biden, Ocasio-Cortez, we can name a bunch more. When you start living the way you demand the rest of us live, well, I'm not saying I'm going to do it anyway, but at least you're leading by example. Drug-fueled orgies in New York City while he's having other people arrested for not following the COVID rules. If they're not going to follow the rules that they demand we follow, then why should we? Why would we be bad people in that case? And yet here's another story. As I read this story, I'm thinking, okay, now that story has been broken, who really covers it? Let's see who really covers the story in the news media. Because it's a story that should be out there, everybody. It should be one of those major headlines that's just dragged through every news organization until every American hears this story. That's what should be happening. But is it happening? Probably not. What you just heard from me, there's a couple of other outlets that will go ahead and cover this, and then you're probably never going to hear this again. But let's just go back to, and when it comes to following rules, you will find that I'm one of those who will take a look at the rule makers to see if they're following the rules. Coming up on 742, so we're going to go ahead and take a look at day weather. And it's Marriott's Mark Cure that we have on day weather today. So Mark and I will talk about the weekend weather forecast, which ought to be just absolutely brilliant for most of Wyoming, as temperatures a bit warmer today drop and get really low. Good chance of some rain for a few people, too. We'll talk about it. 742, Wake Up Wyoming.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, on air, online, and on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app. Be part of the show at 888-97-WOODS. This is K2 Radio.
7:25 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It is a Friday, and off we go to talk today weather, where Mark Cure is waiting by. And I understand, Mark, that you have programmed for us just about the perfect weekend. I'm just going out on a limb. You got it done? We're hoping.
For much of the state, yeah, it's going to be an absolutely gorgeous end of summer and the beginning of fall here across Wyoming.
It sounds to me like we have a little bit of a warmer temperature today, but then when we get into Saturday and Sunday, it drops quite a bit.
Yeah. We have very nice weather today. Very nice weather for the most part on Saturday, but a cold front is nearing the region, as well as a low pressure system from the southwest. And it's going to be far southern and southeastern Wyoming, North Platte River Valley, Saratoga area on east and south. Going to be looking and feeling like fall here late Saturday and Sunday, even some high country snowfall in the snowies on the east side, Sierra Madres. Temperatures just 50s. Sunday in far southeastern Wyoming, but otherwise across Wyoming, we do go from the above average temperatures today, 70s and even some 80s to 60s Saturday and 50s and 60s Sunday.
Can we expect these temperatures to hold for a while? Because I know we're getting into fall. I mean, it officially hits on Sunday, or do we have that yo-yo thing going? Okay. Might have lost him there. That's okay. Yeah, there's a bit of a delay coming back and forth, so I'm not sure Mark was able to hear me all the way through, but that's okay. Yeah, Frank Gambino is sitting in front of us. We can switch over to him, Miss Mary. Frank, you there?
I'm here, so I can give you the weather. It was great
Sure, go
yesterday. It'll be pretty. It'll be pretty good today. Maybe Sunday it may rain a little bit in some places, and then it may not rain in some places.
It may not,
and then,
yeah.
then Monday it may be a little bit breezy in some places, but then again in other places it may not be.
Yeah, and here's my prediction. The sun will shine for part of the day, but then part of the day the sun's not going to shine.
Yeah, and remember...
That's a good time to sleep.
Yeah, and remember at night, turn the lights on of your car.
Yeah, that's true. Yes, it is good. And then have coffee. Okay, that's the story.
Well, there you go right there, yeah.
Okay, now I love it when I come across a study that tells me what I want to be true.
Okay.
And in that case, I don't care if the study's real or not. It's telling me what I want to be true. So, okay, consuming 3 cups of coffee or more of caffeine per day helps to reduce the risk of developing cardiopulmonary neuropathy, heart problems.
So, I don't know. I had to cut down from 3 to about 1.5.
Yeah.
I think too much caffeine makes your heart beat a little bit faster.
Right, yeah.
So that's probably not a good idea for the prevention of heart disease.
Here's what happened to me. I went to go and get a physical. For flying, I have to get a physical.
Yeah, you got to get your medical, yeah.
Yep. And so when I went to get this done, the doctor said, your blood pressure is just a little bit high here. And as we're sort of going through why, because I get a little bit of exercise, I eat good foods, and what am I doing wrong? And then I thought, then again, this is one of those very rare days, because normally I have a cup of coffee in the morning.
Yeah.
No, I had a couple of cups of coffee. Miss Mary brought me another cup. For lunch, I had lunch with someone, and I had a Diet Coke. And I said, I'm jacked on caffeine. And he said, well, come back and see me. But this time, just lay off the caffeine for a couple of days. Yeah. And I was fine.
Right.
Everything registered fine. But you see, Frank, here is a study that's on the internet. And you got to believe what you read on the internet.
Oh,
right?
100% of the time, of
and
course.
it tells me to drink at least 3 cups of coffee a day, if not more.
No.
Now, this is telling me what I want to hear, Frank.
Yeah.
And if it's on the internet, you know it's true. Mm-hmm. That's so. Therefore, I should be like. And for those people drinking those energy drinks,
that's another one.
Yes, which are jam packed full of all sorts of they make you feel like really great, but they're jacked full of how much crap?
You don't want to know.
Exactly right. Which is why I have been. By the way, have you ever tried one of those just for the fun of it?
And I did once, and it tasted. I want to put this in a socially acceptable term.
Like crap?
Yeah.
Okay, that's basically, so we had some down in the refrigerator, not one of DJ Nike's. This was something that we had for Bear Trap Music Festival. And I'm looking at all these different drinks down there, and they're all energy drinks. And I know a lot of people are drinking these things, and I thought, well, I'll go ahead and give one a try. I didn't finish it. Not only did I not like the flavor, it's filled with so much stuff that made me feel really jittery.
Yeah.
That I just decided, I just don't need to do this anymore. And so I think I'm sort of, I don't care if Red Bull gives me wings. I'm not interested.
Me neither.
Okay.
We're on the same page.
Okay. Go with sports.
All right, high school football statewide today and tonight. In 4A, the big game will have number 1 Sheridan hosting number 2 Cheyenne East. Both teams are 3-0. Sheridan going for their 35th consecutive win that will set the Wyoming all-time record. Number 4 Natrona will host number 3 Campbell County. Natrona is 2-1. Campbell County is 3-0. Kelly Walsh rated 5th in our latest Wild Preps poll. They'll be on the road in Gillette to meet 0-3 Thunder Basin. Laramie with a little jump in their step after a win last week at 1-2. They'll be at 1-2 Rock Springs, and Cheyenne South will be at Cheyenne Central, and both teams are 0-3. In 2A, Burns will be at Glen Rock. In 1A 9-man, Pine Bluffs will visit Wright, and in 1A 6-man this afternoon, Midwest will be at KC at 1 p.m. Check out all the football scores and all the volleyball scores and everything on wildpreps.com all day long. The Wyoming Cowboy football team has another chance for victory number 1. They'll take on North Texas in Denton tomorrow night. Cowboys are 0-3 after a 20-point loss to BYU last week, and they're not a good team right now. It's a collective effort to succeed or fail, and the coaches need to fix this team. The offense needs to stay on the field. The defense needs to stay off the field. And they need game-breaking plays, game-breaking players. And the Cowboys also need to play with an edge. North Texas is 2-1. They were destroyed by Texas Tech last week, but the Mean Green are favored by 9. We'll see how that goes. 5 p.m. kickoff from Denton tomorrow night. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. The big Cheyenne Invite High School volleyball tournament begins this morning at the Ford Center in Casper. All 3 of the Cheyenne teams are there. Both of the Casper schools are there. Laramie will be there. Douglas will be there. Bighorn will be there. This is a pretty talented field. That will go all day today and all day tomorrow over at the Ford Center. Yesterday in high school volleyball, Natrona beat Evanston 3-1, and Kelly Walsh beat Riverton 3-1. In college volleyball at the Division I level, the University of Wyoming beat Coppin State 3-0 in UW's tournament. So they'll take on Albany at 6:30 tonight at the UniWild Gym. The Cowgirls are 7-2 on the year. In junior college volleyball, Casper College will have their home opener tonight at 6 p.m. taking on NJC. The T-Birds are 2-14 on the year. Then they'll turn around and host Miles City, Montana tomorrow afternoon at 2 p.m. NJC, by the way, beat LCCC in Cheyenne yesterday 3-0, so L-Trip is 5-12 on the year. In cross country for the high schoolers, Douglas with a meet today. So Douglas, Glenrock, and Kelly Walsh in that deal. Loveland with a meet will in Colorado with East, South, and Laramie in that deal. Arvada West with them will have Cheyenne Central. Sheridan has a meet tomorrow, and NC will be in that one. Lander had a meet yesterday. Lexi Longhurst of Kelly Walsh won that race for the girls, and Trey Squalston of Worland won that one for the boys. It was a beautiful day in Lander yesterday. We'll hope the weather holds up so everyone can travel to all the games they have to go to and have fun today.
It's going to be just absolutely a brilliantly beautiful weekend.
Excellent.
So I think people should just get out there and enjoy, especially because, I mean, we're coming up on the first day of fall here.
When?
Sunday.
Like this Sunday?
Yes.
Like
and
2 days from now?
Yes. And it's going to feel like it.
Oh.
Huh?
Oh.
Not windy. Just
okay.
cool and crisp and a little bit of rain for some people, but mostly no. So just enjoy it, Frank.
I will.
All right. Coming up on some local news we got to take care of. We're going to roll into national news, local news update on the weather forecast. You and I get back into it. 888-97 Woods, Wake Up Wyoming. The time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Friday, and I'm glad you made it. My name is Glenn Woods. Thanks for joining me. Last hour of the program, I was talking with Frank Gambino about a story that had to do with coffee. And somebody did a study. Hey, having 3 cups of coffee a day is good for you because then it talks about heart problems and all sorts of other stuff there. And I'm looking at it thinking, well, I can show you other studies that say that much would be bad for you. But I choose the one that says it's good for me because it's what I want to hear, right? Okay. So there are those people in the cult of climate change that would like to have you eat bugs. Or even, worse yet, just become vegans. And they want that not just because they think they're trying to save the planet, but they think they're trying to save you. And I really do think more than anything else, it has to do with control over other people. But all right. You're going to love this. A surprising study. Now I'm going to stop right there. I'm going to take off surprising because I don't think this is surprising at all. But study finds meat and milk may prevent cancers in the gut. Oh, my God. Who let that study out? And this goes back to what I was asking earlier this morning about several other things I'd covered in the news so far today. And what news organizations are really going to report this? Because they will certainly, if the story said that meat and milk causes cancer in the gut, they're going to be all over that. But if they say to you that meat and milk is good for you, researchers have uncovered a surprising link. Again, I take surprising and throw it away. A link between the food we eat and the prevention of tumors in the small intestine. More importantly, the Japanese team behind the study found the question to suppressing tumors in several unlikely foods. I'll take unlikely out. No, just several foods, including milk and meat, stuff that you're told you're not supposed to be eating, because if you're eating that stuff, you're killing the planet and yourself. That stuff is poison. So say the vegans, anyway. I want to hand this story to a bunch of vegans. Led by the team of scientists at a center whose name I'm not going to tell you because you're just going to forget it anyway. They've revealed that food antigens, particularly those found in meat and milk, are the unsung heroes of keeping gut tumor-free, keeping your lower gut, especially the intestines, tumor-free. The discovery turns the table on the often vilified food antigens, best known for their role in allergic reactions common in foods like peanuts and shellfish. Quote, small intestine tumors, much rarer than those in the colon, but the risks are higher in cases of, oh my God, they throw out a bunch of Greek medical terms that I'll never be able to pronounce. When there's 3 words and each word has like a dozen letters, I'm not even going to try. And therefore, the clinical use of these diets to treat bowel disease and other gastrointestinal conditions in these patients should be considered very carefully, okay? But the study published used a clever experimental design involving mice, once again, who had known tumors. And then they fed them a diet of meat and milk. The plot thickens when the researchers add common food proteins found in meat as well. And what do you know? Solves the problem. Specifically, the mice develop more tumors in small intestines on a regular diet. So what we're getting so far here, okay, here's what you're supposed to be doing. You're supposed to be eating lots of meat, eating and drinking lots of dairy. You with me so far on this? And drinking like just a ton of coffee. And Paul, keep lighting those cigars. The team didn't stop there. They dove deeper into the mechanisms, focusing on special structures in the intestines, these tiny lumps they were looking at. Yeah, they found out the immune system did better when it had milk and meat to work with. Researchers found these patches were, the ability to spread the tumor was also affected. They weren't really able to spread the tumor anymore. So, okay, then they went back and talked about the normal diet. There's a few charts showing me. This study sheds light on the importance of particular cells and their development. Okay. This goes by, and the story goes on for quite a bit, get into a lot of detail. But again, I want to take this story and I want to hand it to vegans. There was a while ago, it's been a while since I told you the story, but in fact, I think I played you part of the audio for this when I first came across this story. So there's a television show, and this is over in the UK. And it kind of looks like it would be like the Today Show or Good Morning America, something like that. And there's a very hippie-looking vegan couple. In fact, they were sort of a cross between yuppies and hippies. A younger couple and actually pretty well dressed, but their mannerisms and their beliefs very hippie-ish. So a yuppie hippie. Combine the word and make a third word out of it. That's basically what they were. And because they were very liberal like this, they had this idea that everything needed to be vegan. So some years ago, they got themselves a puppy. And they started to feed the puppy from day one vegan dog food, which to me is an oxymoron. And that's all the dog had ever eaten. Now the dog's about 5 years old. And now they're on television. Yep, that's all and the dog loves it. The dog loves this vegan food. I just wouldn't eat anything else. So the hosts of the show said, well, let's try that theory. And the couple didn't know that this was going to happen, unbeknownst to them. So brought out to them, or to the dog, was 2 bowls of food. One was a dish of just vegan dog food, which again is an oxymoron. And the other one was a bowl of just chunks of raw meat. And they put both bowls down to see which one the dog would go for. And the couple was saying, well, we know, got to go right for the vegan stuff. And then, oh my God, the shock. The dog made a beeline, did not even consider the vegan dog food. Again, an oxymoron. Made a beeline for the meat and just chomped that sucker down, could not eat it fast enough and wanted more. Well, the vegan couple was just shocked. Well, your dog may have been eating what you've been giving it all these years, but it wasn't offered anything else, and it was hungry. Given a choice, the dog is going to go for the meat. Dogs know this instinctively. This test that was just done on that live television show is absolute proof of it. The dog wants meat. Now, to further prove my point, sometimes memes really just do the best job at explaining things. There is a meme out there on the interweb. It shows a cave painting of a hunting scene. So a cave painting, we're going way, 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 way back prehistoric times. And these cavemen were drawing hunting scenes like all cavemen do. And the meme says, you ever seen a cave painting of a salad? Yeah, I bet you haven't. Okay, there's a reason for that, by the way. And that's not to say that ancient peoples never had a salad. But that's not what they were celebrating, was it? 8:15's the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Oh.
Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods on K2 Radio. Got something to say? Chat him on the Wake Up Wyoming mobile app or call 888-97-WOODS.
7 Woods phone number, that's 888-97-WOODS. You can talk about what I'm talking about or change the subject, fine by me. Chat, I'm going to slightly alter what I think you're on the right track. I said the couple that I was talking about in the last segment, they look like, good-looking couple, but they look like a cross between hippies and yuppies at the same time. Younger couple, but not too young. And they kind of look like yuppies, but if yuppies were hippies, what would you call that? And Chet says a hip yuppie. I'm going to say just drop a couple of letters there. How about a yuppie? A yuppie would be, I think, a better, if they're a cross between the two. We'll work on it. All right. Couple of other stories. By the way, you can jump in and change the subject if you want, or you can do what some of these other people are doing. If you've downloaded the Wake Up Wyoming app, you can just hit the chat option. It's a free app. That's your app store. And so you can just hit the chat option and send me text messages, too. Germany suffers spectacular 70% drop in electric car sales. The European Auto Manufacturers Association said that sales of the new battery-powered electric vehicles, or EVs, in the bloc's largest economy have plunged by 70%. In France, the EU's second largest market for battery electric vehicles, they fell behind Germany by another 33%. They had already fallen before, so add another 33% on top of that. It's a spectacular drop in Germany and France, they said, meant that only, it talks about how many registered vehicles they had sold, which, let me see, a fall off for 43.9% from the year earlier. Wow. There's not a lot left going on in sales there. It warned that the continuing downward trajectory of European electric car market leaves manufacturers at risk for multi-billion-dollar euro fines. See, the European Commission, which creates and enforces EU law, is preparing to introduce new targets for cars and vans designed to, as they say, slash carbon emissions. However, they said the EV market share remains far below the level. So I want to know exactly what they're wanting these auto manufacturers to do, because it's unrealistic in the European Union. The law is now that car manufacturers must manufacture this percentage of electric vehicles over internal combustion engines and sell that many. Well, what happens if people are just not buying them? So the European Union is going to fine the automobile manufacturers. Why are you fining the manufacturers when it's the people who just don't want them? You're going after the wrong people. You shouldn't go after anybody. It should be individuals. This is what freedom is about, an individual's choice on what they want to buy. So the idea that, well, if you don't sell a certain number, we're going to go after you with fines and so on. Go ahead. You're just going to put these companies out of business. That's really all you're going to do. Let me see. Some other suggestions. True Dog. Just call them yippies. Okay, so cross between that's not bad. A hippie and a yuppie is just a yippie. Firefit Paul also says yippie. Rebecca from Bern says, I would call them yippies. Okay, that's 3. So I would say we have it then. As I'm watching this young couple on television, and it looked like a cross between hippies and yuppies, they are now yippies. So we have yuppies, we have hippies, and we have yippies. That works for me. You see, this is why I hired you guys to listen to the show. All right, next one here. Let's see. Let's go to the salaries. Okay, we haven't talked about this before. I've talked about a lot of things with the cult of climate change, but I often say that these so-called environmental groups are not really environmental groups. They're a cult. Oh, wait, let's see, one more. Yippee, they probably sound like yippee little dogs when they're complaining. Yes, they do. They do sound like yippee little dogs just when they're talking in general. But anyway, so these environmental groups are usually not environmental groups at all. They're teams of lawyers who found that they can make a ton of money by suing the federal government and state governments. And if you're wondering, well, who pays those salaries? The federal governments and the state governments. See, let me just look at the feds for a moment. This was the idiotic part of it. And I remember when our Senator Lummis, she was in the House of Representatives, she called this program here because she was trying to get something passed. Let's say the federal government came after you and you wanted to fight the feds in court, but you don't have that kind of money. That's not a fair fight. So Congress set up some money so you can go ahead and dip into that money and fight the federal government. But lawyers will come along and say, oh, yeah, but I charge $600 an hour. And they can bill the federal government for whatever they want. So-called environmental groups, most of them are not. And they make money off of suing states and the federal government and getting that money for the lawsuits. And who cares if they win or not? But no matter what, they just keep on suing. And this is how they make a ton of money. And who cares about the environment? All right, so let's go for environmental groups, and let's take a look at their salaries. Forget the lawyers for a minute. The author of this says, working for an environmental, and we'll put it in air quotes, nonprofit, can be lucrative if you're the boss. Many leaders of major environmental conservation groups take home annual compensation packages higher than 6 figures. According to tax documents, nonprofits are required to publicly disclose. Carl Roberts, President and CEO of World Wildlife Fund. Compensation per year, $1,204,775 a year. Fred Krupp rhymes with corrupt. President of Environmental Defense Fund. Total yearly compensation, $922,022. Jennifer Morris, CEO of Nature Conservatory. Total compensation, $758,013 a year. Elizabeth Gray, CEO of National Audubon Society, $705,458 a year. Michelle Bernard, Interim President, Natural Resource Defense Council, $705,195 a year. Janice Jones, Ocean Conservatory, $692,836 a year. That's just some of them that I have here. There's more, but you understand how high that compensation is. Let's go back to the first one. Roberts, who's led a massive international campaign since 2005, one of the top paid leaders. His base pay was over $1 million a year for the World Wildlife Funds. Wow. So total compensation, that was a guy, $1,204,775. That's the base pay. Are there bonuses with this? I'd like to know. But these people are interested in saving the world. Now, if this is, first off, I don't like it being called a nonprofit when clearly someone is profiting. These people also make a lot of money off of donations as well. I mean, huge donations. So what are they really interested in? The salaries are, and those are the top people. I would like to see what the other salaries are, and then let's go take a look at how much their lawyers make, because again, the lawyers just keep on suing, and they'll charge $400 to $600 an hour to sue the federal government, and they get paid by the federal government to do it. Well, Whisper and Platte Records, hippies and yuppies that talk too much nonsense are yappies. Let's see. Yippies probably sound... Yeah, okay. So, yep. I think everybody's pretty much in agreement that we should call them yippies, though. And it does sound like a little yippy dog. Yeah, I agree. Coming up with local news. After a local news update on the weather forecast. Then you and I get back into it with a nice long segment of open phones. 888-97-WOODS, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Or serious takes on local politics, or something like that. Tune in weekdays 6 to 10 a.m. to Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods.
Something else here, but I want to finish up with the topic I just went through about so-called environmental groups. Don't call yourself a nonprofit if your CEO is making well over $1 million a year. And then who knows the compensation for all sorts of other people under that. To which, RH from Wiggins, Colorado, Glenn, I would be interested to see these environmentalist CEO leaders' homes, automobiles, and their private way of life from day to day. I bet they do not live a reserved, modest life. I bet they consume a lot of resources daily. Yeah, I think you're right, and I think we can pretty much guarantee that. But once again, how dare we criticize them, right? I mean, they're out there trying to save the planet. So how dare we criticize their lifestyle? You remember what happened when John Kerry was called on that? An actual real reporter accidentally, and maybe got in trouble for it, I don't know, did a real act of journalism, although it was not reported by most news outlets. John Kerry had arrived at yet another place in a big jet, and he was climbing into a big limousine. And with his staff there were several other big SUVs to go with him. That's a lot of fuel. And the reporter asked him about that, and asked him about, well, there was other things about his life, multiple homes, things like that, but asked him about that jet travel and the big SUVs and so on. And John Kerry got really mad. Why, don't you understand who I am? Don't you understand I'm trying to save the planet here? If I'm going to have to do this, and I'm going to have to travel this way, don't you understand this? How dare we question him for living that lifestyle? Leonardo DiCaprio, one of the biggest hypocrites out there, he got off a massive yacht. And I forget how big, it was one of the biggest yachts on the planet. I mean, in the top 10 easily. And he had borrowed it from a friend. By the way, and I think he was in the Mediterranean Sea. The thing, by the way, is huge, and it's diesel-powered. Now, give him credit, guys. He was hanging around on that big yacht with a bunch of supermodels, so give him credit for that. Now he's got to go talk to the United Nations about climate change and our carbon footprint. So a private helicopter lands on the helipad of the private yacht. A helicopter, that's a big carbon footprint too, and takes him to an airport where he gets on a private jet and jets all the way to New York to speak at the United Nations. After he is limoed Yes, big limousine. He's brought to a march. This is a march that's going to go through New York City, protesting our lack of effort on climate change. And a reporter for a smaller conservative news organization saw DiCaprio and approached him and asked him, how did you get here? Didn't you get here in a jet? And what about that big yacht you were just on? Now, DiCaprio has security, as you might imagine, a guy who's on that level of fame and money has security. And his security immediately started to form a barrier so the reporter couldn't get close to DiCaprio. DiCaprio kept in the climate march looking straight forward and never acknowledged that the reporter was there. Didn't want to answer. How dare we question Leonardo DiCaprio? How dare we? Or as Greta Thunberg would say, how dare you? How dare we question him after all he's done? Then he gets to the UN and he argues about CO2 emissions. When he was done, DiCaprio took the same limousine back to the same corporate jet that flew him back to the helipad, and then the helicopter flew him back to his supermodels on that massive diesel-powered yacht. So let's go back and take a look at, here are these people. They're supposed to be worldwide environmental groups, and they call themselves nonprofit agencies, nonprofits. And yet the CEOs of these so-called nonprofits, some of them earn over $1 million a year. And the question from RH down in Colorado is a legitimate question. If we were to go check to see how they live, would you expect to find a micro home and they go everywhere on bicycles? What would you expect to see with a salary that big? What kind of lifestyle do you expect to see? And I think we already have the answer to that. We all know how these folks are going to live. Now, I keep picking on the heads, the CEOs who are making over $1 million for these environmental groups. Let's go down the chain. What about the people who work under them? Who are still earning six figures for working under them? And how would you expect them to live? Again, I think we already know the answer to this. This goes back to something that for those who just joined me, what I was talking about earlier this morning was I noticed somebody who was really abiding by the rules to the point that, in my opinion, of being ridiculous. And there's a lot of rules that I just ignore, especially if I see people who've created rules for us and yet they refuse to obey the rules themselves. Not just the cult of climate change, but when it came to COVID, all of the politicians and the bureaucrats who were demanding that we follow their rules, and yet they weren't following those same rules. And how dare we discover it? How dare we check up on them? How dare we call it out? And my answer back then was, if you guys aren't going to follow your own rules that you demand, you're going to arrest us for not following the rules, but you're not going to follow those rules. If you're not, I'm not. If you're going to make all these rules for us to live by, those rules apply to you too. Politicians, bureaucrats, they apply to you too. If we find you breaking the rules, then we have permission to break the rules. How about that? So for the cult of climate change, from the environmental groups that I mentioned with the CEOs with their big salaries, to the politicians and the Hollywood types who live at large, and God bless them for being that successful and living that large, if that's what they want to do. But if they're going to be that hypocritical about it, then at the same time I have to say, well, if you're going to live that way, then I'm going to live that way too. And I don't want to hear any criticism, because every time you criticize me, I'm going to scream at the top of my lungs, hypocrites, while I'm pointing at you and pointing at your corporate jet and your big mansion. How about that? They can't stand it when, like John Kerry, you should, if you've never seen the video, you can go ahead and look it up. Go take a look at how upset he was when he was called out. He was really upset with that reporter when he was called out on his hypocrisy. But what also got me was news media outlets barely covered that exchange. The exchange with Leonardo DiCaprio being called out over his hypocrisy, news organizations, most of them, barely covered the exchange. If they really wanted to do their job, that would be the number one thing that they would be covering, wouldn't it? It would actually be, they would look for things like that and call them out. If anything, if news organizations were serious about it, about climate, and since we're talking about that at the moment, if they're that serious about climate, they would live a miniature lifestyle to save the climate, and they would call out anyone who was being hypocritical. Start with Al Gore, go to Barack Obama next, and move on down the road from there. Call them all out and keep calling them out until either they get in line or everything falls apart and people finally do what they should have done a long time ago, which is just give up on this nonsense. But okay, yeah, there's a time, folks, when you should just ignore the rules, and that's when the rule makers are ignoring their own rules. Then it's okay for you to do it too. Don't worry about it. Just roll on. Coming up at 8:45, got to get a hold of Frank Gambino. He's going to talk sports with us. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Hope.
Polish off that tin hat. You'll need it for this one. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Available on demand on the Wake Up Wyoming app.
8:48 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. Back we go to talk to Frank Gambino about sports. So, Frank, I got a doozy for you. You're going to love this.
Oh, all right.
I swear you're going to love it. You really are.
Try me.
All right. So, there are some people who love to fly model airplanes, and some of these model airplanes are pretty good size. And in some of them, in fact, you can look inside and see like a little figure of a pilot.
Okay.
You know, about the size of a G.I. Joe action figure, let's
Right.
say. And so here's a guy who has what looks like a bush plane design. Again, it's a pretty good size remote-controlled model airplane. And as he's getting ready to go, one of the doors is open on the side, and a pretty good-sized frog jumped in.
Oh, like
Frog,
a real
you wanna
frog.
go for a ride? Yes.
Oh,
Frog, you want to go for a ride? Fine. So he closes the door.
Well, let him drive.
And
And
then
he flew with the frog?
Yeah, he took off, and the frog, the whole time, he has a camera inside the model airplane. So you can see what the view is from the inside of the plane flying around. And so through most of the trip, the frog is going back and forth looking out the windows. Like anybody would when in a small airplane. You enjoy the view
Yeah.
as you fly around, right? Okay. So at that point, I got to wonder, what is the frog thinking about what's going on? As he goes for this nice flight, and the guy does a few laps around the field and then comes back and does a nice landing and lets the frog out. And the frog is in no rush to get out.
Oh.
Now, the person who posted this video, which, of course, I had to put up on my social media as soon as I saw this, the post has just one phrase written on the top. His friends will never believe him.
No, they won't.
No. So he's got to go back to the pond and sit there on the lily pad and try to figure out to his friends how to explain, I got in that little airplane over there. What's an airplane? And they took me way up in the air, and I was flying like a bird.
And he was sitting first class.
Yes. Oh, my Lord, yeah. So what kind of dreams is this frog going to have from now on?
Well, you're on you can be in the water, under the water, in the air. He has
In
more
the air.
perspective than most human beings.
That's all right. Go with sports.
All right, high school football all around the state today and tonight. In 4A, number 1 Sheridan will host second-rated Cheyenne East. Both teams are 3-0. Sheridan will be going for their 35th consecutive victory that would set the all-time Wyoming record. In Casper tonight, 4th-rated Natrona will host 3rd-rated Campbell County. Campbell County comes in at 3-0, and Natrona will come in at 2-1. Kelly Walsh rated 5th this week in our latest high school WyoPreps high school poll. On the road in Gillette to take on Thunder Basin. Kelly Walsh is 2-1. Laramie at 1-2 after a victory last week. They'll be on the long road trip over to Rock Springs, and the Tigers come in at 1-2. And Cheyenne South will be at Cheyenne Central in a battle of 0-3 teams. In 2A, Burns will be at Glen Rock tonight in Glen Rock's homecoming game. Pine Bluffs will be at Wright, and this afternoon at 1 p.m., Midwest will visit KC in 6-man football. Wyoming Cowboy football team has another chance for victory. Numero uno, they will take on North Texas in Denton tomorrow night. Hey, folks are 0-3 after a 20-point loss to Brigham Young last week, and it's not a good team right now. It's a collective effort to succeed or fail. And really, the coaches have to fix this team, and they have to fix it now. The offense needs to stay on the field and keep the defense off the field. They need to have game-breaking plays with game-breaking players. and the Cowboys need to play with an edge. North Texas is 2-1. They were destroyed by Texas Tech last week, but the Mean Green are favored by 9 at home. We'll see how that goes from Denton. It's a 5 p.m. kickoff tomorrow. We'll have that for you on KT Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. High school volleyball. The Casper Invite will start later on this morning at the Ford Center in Casper. All 3 Cheyenne teams are there. Both of the Casper schools are there, plus some really, really good teams like Laramie, Douglas, and Bighorn. It's going to be a pretty interesting tournament, so that'll go all day today and all day tomorrow over at the Ford Center. In college volleyball, the University of Wyoming in their own tournament beat Coppin State yesterday 3-0 to get to 7-2. They'll play Albany tonight at 6:30 at the Uni-Wyo Gym. In junior college volleyball, Casper College at 2-14 on the year. They will have their home opener tonight against NJC from Sterling, Colorado. They will begin at 6 o'clock. Then they will turn around and host Miles City, Montana tomorrow at 2. NJC defeated LCCC from Cheyenne last night 3-0, so LTRIP is 5-12 on the year. High school cross country. Douglas with a meet today. So Douglas, Glenrock, and Kelly Walsh in that deal. Cheyenne East, Cheyenne South, and Laramie are in Loveland. Sheridan will have a meet tomorrow, and the Trona will be in that one. Cheyenne Central actually is in a meet today at Arvada West. Yesterday, Lander had a meet. Lexi Longhurst of Kelly Walsh won the girls' race, and Trace Walstead of Worland won the boys' race. And that's it in sports.
So you can follow all of this on
WildPreps.com all day. Do you know what I'm talking about by all day? All day.
All night. If you wake up in the middle of the night, you're supposed to be sleeping. You can go ahead and peruse. By the way, if you have kids playing some of these sports and you have pictures,
send them in.
Yeah.
We will always take those. Matter of fact, right now, on Wild Preps, we just have a huge collection of photos from around the state. I think there's 239.
Wow. Okay. And you know what I always do every single year is I go through them all and pick the ones that I think are the most fantastic and do an award-winning gallery. They don't get any award there. I just call it that.
Well, yeah. I mean, it's those images that go.
Yes. Did that actually happen? All right.
Yep,
Thank you, Frank. Coming up on some local business that we have to take care of, news time, national local update on the weather forecast. You and I get back to it with open phones in the 9 o'clock hour. Let's wake up.
Your
9:06 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Friday. Glad you made it. Going to be a beautiful weekend. Oh, by the way, first day of fall is Sunday. Believe it or not, we're already reached there. All right. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97-WOODS. You can also text me using the Wake Up Wyoming app, and I'll go ahead and answer that. I've been doing that all morning long with people who are texting me on a free app, by the way. It's a free app. All right, not surprising for you. And I haven't covered really much about the presidential campaigns too much, but this, to me, is interesting, not surprising. We had the second attempt against Donald Trump, the second assassination attempt. 95% of the major network coverage of Trump was negative after that attempt, which just tells me that they can't say good things. If he looks like he might get a sympathy vote, they can't have that. Story says ABC, CBS, NBC, on their nightly news, all broadcasted overwhelmingly negative commentary on Republican presidential candidate after Sunday's thwarted shooting attempt, or the guy never got off a shot, but you get the idea. Quote, a look at the first 72 hours of coverage from those three networks, evening newscasts, Sunday through Tuesday night, finds that while the attempted assassination dominated the campaign coverage, these networks' anti-Trump spin was as bad as it could be. 95% negative versus just 5% positive, wrote MRC contributing editor. While the attempted assassination allegedly perpetrated by a 50-year-old, and we went through that story, roughly made up 70% of campaign airtime at all three networks. 20 of the 21 equivalent comments reviewed by the center was negative toward Trump. After Secret Service agents, and it talks about how they thwarted. Okay, so Trump says the rhetoric lies, exemplified by the false statements made by Comrade Kamala Harris during the highly partisan ABC debate and all of the ridiculous lawsuits specifically designed to inflict damage. Yeah, they're not trying to fight a fair fight, are they? Over on NBC, Lester Holt repeated apparent assassination attempt and talked a lot about Trump's rhetoric. NBC, and instead of just covering what happened, NBC's Lester Holt just blamed President Trump for the attempt on his life, saying it was due to his rhetoric on illegal immigration. Seriously. Here's another one. Quote, today's apparent assassination attempt comes amid increasingly fierce rhetoric, the campaign itself, in the trial of Mr. Trump and his running mate J.D. Vance continue to make baseless claims about Haiti and Ohio. So that's why. That's why there was an assassination attempt? Okay. Blame him. During CBS Monday night broadcast, Laura O'Donnell fired back at Trump's claim that leftist rhetoric is what fanned violence against him. Quote, Donald Trump is blaming Democrats for inflaming political rhetoric, but the former president's own words seem to be increasing the threat of violence against him. NBC's Greta Hake, I think that's how you pronounce her name, after pointing out the second assassination attempt, echoed the talking points of the Democrats, basically. Today, Trump arguing the suspect believed the rhetoric of Biden and Harris, but instead she's saying believe Trump's rhetoric. These networks gave, I think, relatively little time to anything really about who the shooter was. And even then, there was some shooter coverage that talked about this guy in almost a positive light. Not quite, but almost a positive light, rather than trying to do a deep dive on who the guy was and how much trouble he had gotten in over his entire life. Now, let's imagine, and I know you don't need to do this because your brain is already going to, but let's just have some fun with it anyway. So let's take a look at what had happened if there had been 2 assassination attempts against Kamala Harris. On the second attempt, what would be said by, you already know. News media would be blaming Trump for it. News media would be blaming conservatives for it. We already know some news media outlets blame the gun. New York Times, one of their op-ed writers, blamed the gun and gun violence and America's gun culture. Which is saying gun culture also blames conservatives, especially in conservative states, for their love of guns. Does everything but blame the person who actually went after the president. Both people did everything but actually look at the people who did it and what types of personalities they were, or what would drive them to do such a thing. But this is your news for it. When I was much younger, much younger, I had heard that the media was liberal and biased, and they certainly were when I was a kid. And even when I was growing up, I could see that there was some bias in reporting in the news. As I got older, 2 things happened. At first, I wondered, is it worse because I'm noticing it more, or is it getting worse? And I think both answers are true. On the one hand, as I've gotten more savvy at watching news and figuring out what is propaganda and slant and bias compared to what is actual reporting, which I don't see much of actual reporting. But 2 things. One, I do notice it more. The more I study it, the more I notice it. But I can also honestly say that over the past, I'd say, decade or more, it has gotten a whole lot worse in general, as news organizations are not even worried with trying to hide how biased they are, although they do still lie about it. But most of them really don't put much of an attempt out there to try to hide or cover up that they're being biased. They just outright, blatantly do it. Now, for those of you who think, well, thank God Fox News is number one, Fox has a lot of their own problems. I can get into that too. Fox has a lot of their own problems. So they're nowhere near perfect. But also, Fox News Network is, even though the ratings are really high, when you combine, let's just take television news. So CNN, MSNBC, but also NBC, CBS, and ABC, and combine them. All together, they have more of an audience than Fox News does alone. So Fox News may be at the top of the ratings, but combined ratings, that puts them way down, way down. You'd be surprised how low those ratings actually are when all combined. Now, if I can give you a little bit of good news on this. Television news and also just news, what used to be news media in general, has been slipping as far as viewership and readership over the years as people become less and less tolerant, would be one word, of what they see and read in their evening news. Tolerant is one of the words that I would use for that. And they start going off somewhere else. Either they don't look for news at all anymore, they just threw up their hands and said, screw it, and gave up, or they're looking somewhere else for news. Unfortunately, there's still a large percentage of Americans who really don't pay attention enough to notice what they're being fed. They get little bits and pieces. That's all the information they have. And so, like the low information voter, they don't have much to go on. So they believe what little they do see. 9:15 is the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Sure, this show is sustainable. We sequester all gas emissions to one room. Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods, live on AM 1030 and FM 95.1. Weekdays at 6.
Wake Up Wyoming, 888-97 Woods, the phone number, 888-97-WOODS. So, this is bad news. Wyoming's Attorney General said more than 400 cases need to be reviewed after the Wyoming State Crime Laboratory's firearms unit failed an annual proficiency test. This is from WildFile. Story says, with so many cases, it's unclear how long the effort will take or whether it will result in overturned convictions or not. The firearm unit failed the test in November, the Attorney General said, and the results were published in February. Quote, we immediately began speaking to our accreditation board to determine what corrective action needs to be taken. And then, see, what I really wonder for is, well, okay, now what do you do with these 400 cases? A lot needs to be reviewed here. Quote, during the initial steps of corrective action, additional problems were found, additional concerns were found related to lab, particularly with microscope examinations. As a result, the lawyers right now are wringing their hands and salivating over this. Well, this is more time they get to bill. And as a result, those additional concerns in May of this year, we did suspend, the work of our firearms unit. So the state has contracted with experts to process firearms sent to the crime lab for the time being. In other words, send it somewhere else to be inspected. If we have a gun incident in Wyoming, it'll be sent somewhere else, not done in the investigation done in the state of Wyoming. Other outside entities were contacted to review the cases, for which Hill said there should be enough resources in their budget. Quote, we've been very transparent about this. We've let prosecutors know. We've let the defense bar, both state and federal, we let law enforcement know that we have experienced a problem and that we're taking corrective action, which I'm glad they are. Her office sent out a letter to these groups in July, Hill said, informing them the state is reanalyzing prior tests to help identify and prioritize cases. I would think that what they're doing here would be taking all of the 400 cases that were mentioned at the beginning of the story and send them out of state or somewhere else to be the test be redone, which could take a while. But she's saying, hey, we have the budget for it, so I would suppose they put extra money aside just in case there's a problem, which they should. So WildFile initially reported on this issue in July. After that letter went out, but public details were sparse at the time. So in order to retain accreditation, Hill said, the last decade of cases will need to be reviewed, which is why there are so many to go through. She said it's very important that the lab is accredited only because it's the only crime lab in the state. It's important it's trustworthy. When asked whether there was a timeline to go through the 400-plus cases, at the moment, there isn't. In some cases, it's relatively quickly, it can be done fast, but other cases, no. And then there's 400 of them. And some of these cases go back a while. Which is why I said, and the lawyers are salivating, those that can make extra money off of this. Quote, it's the ones where it's closer to call and might take a little bit of time. This does not affect any of any part of our lab except the firearms unit, she said. She added that she's proud of the crime lab, and it recently won an award for its efficiency. The crime lab operates under the Wyoming Division of Criminal Investigation, which is one of 6 units that make up the Attorney General's office. Others include law enforcement, the Wyoming Law Enforcement Academy, the Wyoming Peace Officer Standard and Training, the Wyoming Division of Victim Services, and the Government's Council on Development and Disabilities. So we'll continue to take those corrective actions, she said, and make sure that we're compliant with the law, but also determine the root cause of the problem and correct it, she said. And I think that's the end of the story here. Yep, it is. I think like a lot of you, really surprised when I read that story. Wow, how bad does that have to be? So, all right. Now we have to go all the way back and correct. At least they have the resources to go for some out-of-state help, which they ought to be able to clear this up quickly if that's the case. But we'll see how quickly is. I want to talk real quick about a fire. I did a really nice gallery a while ago of pictures. Brought a friend of mine with me who's a photographer. So I'd gone to the airport in Casper, and there was a whole bunch of firefighting airplanes there. I mean, a bunch of all sizes. From the small air tractor, crop duster kind that were converted for firefighting, all the way up to these big jetliners that are dropping. Basically, it's a fire retardant chemical to help it prevents the fire from being able to catch hold. It's a really sticky stuff that they drop, and the fire has a hard time lighting it. So everything in between, including those planes that dip water, the airboats basically, that will land in Glendo and scoop up water while on the move and take off and head out and drop it on the fire. Now, the fire in question, just south of Douglas and up on the Laramie Range, was a fire that they don't know why fire yet. They don't know the cause of the fire. But, man, it was a lot of timber, and it was going up fast. And I do remember last week I was driving from Cheyenne north, and I saw the smoke going over top of the highway. And I knew that's the fire that all of these were there for. Now, they did get a lot of rain up there the last time we got a bunch of rain. That helped. That certainly did help. Yesterday, I was driving south. As I got past Douglas, I kept looking over to see, well, where's the smoke? And I didn't see any smoke there at all. It was clear skies yesterday. But according to the story that I have, this is the La Bonte fire, burning south of Douglas, 55% contained, according to the Bureau of Land Management. Cooler temperatures and rainfall helped fire crews earlier this week, the story says, but strong winds on Wednesday. New challenges. Conditions are expected to be a bit warmer today and a bit drier, but then cool down over the weekend. Fires currently 3,484 acres burning on private BLM rugged area. And so there are some crews up in there, but most of it's being fought from the air. They got about 137 personnel in the area, but yeah, a whole lot of it from the air. They're going to continue suppressing with helicopter drops today. There was also some fires in Wyoming that, some buildings were lost. The good news is, across the state, that a lot of these fires, they're getting them under control, and that's the good news. We still have a ways to go, but a lot of the fires are at least under control. So the weather also is cooperating for a while with cooler temperatures and a lot less wind, and even a slight chance of some rain coming through the area, but for the most part, it's going to be, as we get into the first day of fall, which is Sunday, it's going to be cool temperatures and really no wind, which is huge help to firefighters, and will be that way for a little while. Drier conditions don't help, and that's what the air is going to be, really dry, but at least we have the cool temperatures and almost no wind. Coming up on some local news that we have to take care of after a local news update on the weather forecast, and you and I get back into it. I got a little bit more to cover. 888-97 Woods, the phone number. That's 888-97 WOODS. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
pure. Glenn Woods. He talks to you, not at you. Be part of the show at 888-97-WOODS. This is Wake Up Wyoming on K2 Radio.
9:36 the time. It's Wake Up Wyoming. It's a Friday as we head into the last couple of days of summer, believe it or not, because it's going to be fall by the time we get to Sunday. Here's one that I kind of held off to the last minute. I thought this was an interesting little post. I don't need to get into a lot of detail. Just read a few things from you. See, there's several websites out there I like to monitor. And really, I'm just monitoring just to see what they post, what they talk about. And sometimes it's really entertaining. One of them is Everyday Feminism. That's a hysterical and disturbing site. Another one, same idea, feminists. And this is a Facebook page that I watch. Now, the reason for doing this, look, women who want their rights, absolutely. And Wyoming is known for that. I mean, we gave women the right to vote. We had the first female governor, for that matter. All good, all about that. But, of course, there's always people who need to take a good thing way too far. So let's take a look at some real posts here. One of them from their social media. How to safely leave your conservative husband. Okay, so if your husband's conservative, you need to leave him and do it safely. Start by saving all the money you can. Don't tell him about it. There's no need to discuss anything with him or his family. Make up your mind, just act on it. Use his job to your advantage. Leave while he's there for the day, night, whatever. When he's gone out working, leave. He can and will attempt to take the children from school. Keep that in mind. Use the gray rock method. Do not engage. Replace electronics that can be easily tracked. Keep the plan to yourself. And this is, again, if your husband is conservative, ladies, that you're going to want to get the hell out of there. And say, I like this one. I don't want to die and orphan my other children because of Republicans. See, here's one. So weird, this woman says, being raised Christian and spending your entire childhood being told to care about others. And then one day they're like, no, you can't. You're not actually supposed to care about others because you're a stupid socialist. Don't know where she got that idea from. But you get some of the things that are posted on there are just really weird and disturbing. And it's not a parody page. Let's see here. There's another one here. In order to survive in this world, women for Harris must disengage from our conservative husbands, even though they're great dads and loving husbands and humble and etc. Even if you have a good husband, he's a conservative, and you want to vote for Harris. So you're just going to have to disengage from him. It's not a parody or anything like that. There are actual people who think like this. And I wonder, if you want to see this, it's a Facebook page called Feminist News. And I look at it and I think, can I go in there? I'd like to edit something. Instead of calling it Feminist News and making it a feminist Facebook page, can I just call it Karen News? And that kind of makes me wonder, they would be under a name. They wouldn't use Karen, but there Facebook or social media pages out there for Karens. I would bet that there are. So I would say, if you just want to, don't engage. I would say, if you want to, go ahead. But what I do is I don't engage with any of these people, because if I do, well, then it changes the dynamic. It's a lot like one of the scientific thought experiments out there, that something changes the moment you start to observe it. So I can watch these pages, the websites and social media, but I never join and I never say anything. I'm just curious as to what they think and what they say to each other when they think nobody's looking or watching. And it's fine if people have other opinions. I'm all about that. If you heard this show long enough, you know I'm all about people with other opinions. It's people who have very disturbing opinions. And again, become, in this case, very much the Karen type. And they think nobody else is listening. And so they say the most horrific things that you can possibly imagine. And some of this stuff, I wonder why social media. If social media is going to take down some of your posts, or block you or shadow ban you for things you've said. I wonder how some of these other pages actually get away with it. I really wonder how some of these other pages get away with it. But if they have more of the, like, for example, the feminist slant, then they can say stuff that you probably wouldn't get away with saying if you're trying to communicate somewhere on social media. Now, to me, it's just interesting to go to, and there's other things besides the feminist end of it, just to go to different websites. And I even monitor the Flat Earth Society, just so you know. I don't subscribe to anything. I just have their social media. And I should say not their, but his, because it's maybe one or two people. And I just watch what they post. Because sometimes it's just absolutely hysterical to see what they'll go ahead and put out there. When they think they're talking to their own kind, or they really think that nobody else is listening that would really care. So if you want to entertain yourself, now you will annoy yourself if you try to engage and argue with them. But if you just want to sit back and read, caution, some of it's really disturbing at times. And when I find myself getting too disturbed by this kind of stuff, that's when I just turn it off and go do something else. All right, coming up on 9:43. One more time with Frank Gambino coming up. It's Wake Up Wyoming.
Covering world-ending catastrophes for years to come. It's Wake Up Wyoming with Glenn Woods. Find content, chat
9:47
live,
the time.
and
Wake
listen
Up
on
Wyoming.
demand
Go to
on the
Frank
Wake Up
Gambino.
Wyoming mobile
So,
app.
Frank, sometimes you see the strangest things when you're in town. I mean, you see even stranger things when you're outside of town, but you've seen strange things in town, right?
I see strange things everywhere I go.
Yes. Okay, well, so here I was walking into a shop yesterday in Cheyenne, Wyoming, and walking out, I held the door for him.
Yeah?
Was a guy in a knight's outfit, like medieval knight.
Oh, like the King Arthur's Round Table
that
kind of a thing?
Yeah.
Okay.
Now, the upper body was armored.
Yes.
The lower body,
He
he
had
was
spandex?
just wearing period pants and stuff. It would be hard to walk around in full armor. And so the arms swung free, and so did the legs, although they were in period dress, and something that you would probably wear under armor, although a little bit baggier. But still, from the waist up, he was wearing, it was a dark chest plate, and then he had a nice helmet on, and the scales around his shoulders and chest were like dragon scales. You got to see the picture of him on the Wake Up Wyoming site. And the main color of the garments were green. And so, of course,
I see that here. I am looking
Yes.
at it right now.
The Green Knight is what I call him.
It's either he's in a play,
yeah,
or he's on a quest for the Holy Grail.
or maybe he's he's Cheyenne's
Maybe he's a traffic
superhero.
cop.
Traffic cop, Cheyenne's superhero.
Yeah.
How about that? Now, it was about 70 degrees at the time, so I can understand why he can get away wearing that. Because if we were in the middle of this summer on one of the hotter days, his brain would be basically like an egg right about now that's been in the frying pan too long.
But what has he been doing with this armor?
I don't know.
I mean, is he fighting a battle we're not aware of?
I probably now. Here's the thing: ask him a question, and it's hard to understand him through the helmet.
mask, yeah,
Yeah,
or the helmet, yeah.
sure. Yeah, it's very difficult to understand him there. So I can ask him all sorts of questions, but it's kind of muffled and tinty sounding, as you might imagine. So that didn't do a whole lot of good. But I will tell you, he does drive a car.
Well, since when do Knights of the Round Table drive?
Yeah, I wanted to see him ride off on a steed.
Yeah.
Not a horse, but a steed.
Yes.
Okay.
Right,
I didn't see.
right down Lincoln Way there.
I would say so. Okay. So we have to wonder then, why is he walking around dressed like this in full regalia? And what was he doing walking out of a cigar shop? I didn't know knights smoked cigars.
Well, how do you do that with the screen on there?
I could see if he had, because of the faceplate, like a hole for a cigar.
Yeah.
That might actually look kind of cool, but he didn't.
You know what? He's probably rehearsing for Halloween.
Right. I would say, yeah. I'm going to stick with he's Cheyenne superhero just because I like that. Although he's got to get a better vehicle to drive around on, maybe get a steed.
Yeah,
Okay,
I would
yeah.
think so, yeah.
Go with sports.
High school football all around the state today and tonight. In 4A, number 1 Sheridan will host number 2 Cheyenne East. Both teams are 3-0. A win for Sheridan gives them 35 in a row. That would set the all-time Wyoming record. Natrona will host Campbell County at 7 p.m. tonight in Casper. Natrona comes in at 2-1. Campbell County at 3-0. Kelly Walsh at 2-1 on the year. Travels to Gillette to take on 0-3 Thunder Basin. Cheyenne South will be at Cheyenne Central in the battle of 0-3 teams. And Laramie with a win last week, so they're 1-2. And they will be on the road at Rock Springs at 1-2. In 2A, Burns will be at Glen Rock for the Herders' homecoming game. And 1A, 9-man Pine Bluffs will be over in Wright. And in 6-man this afternoon, Midwest will be at KC. We'll have all those high school football scores on WyoPreps.com throughout the course of the day and the evening. High school, and now we'll talk about college football. The Wyoming Cowboys will be on the road at North Texas in Denton tomorrow night. I don't know if Cowboy fans should listen to or watch the game because it may be ugly, but it may be interesting. Who knows? Cowboys are 0-3 after a 20-point loss to BYU last week, and they're just not a good team right now. It's a collective effort to succeed or fail, and the coaches have got to fix this. The offense needs to stay on the field. The defense needs to stay off the field. And there needs to be game-breaking plays by game-breaking players. And the Cowboys need to play with an edge. North Texas is 2-1. They were destroyed by Texas Tech last week. The Mean Green are favored by 9. We'll see how that goes. 5 p.m. kickoff from Denton. We'll have that for you on K2 Radio in Casper and KOWB in Laramie. High school volleyball, that Casper invite at the Ford Center for the high schoolers is beginning here in a few minutes. 3 Cheyenne schools, 2 Casper schools, plus defending 4A champion Laramie, defending 2A champion Bighorn. Douglas will be in that thing. There's a lot of good teams in this deal. So that'll go all day today, and then bracket play will be tomorrow at the Ford Center in Casper. In college volleyball at the Division I level, the Wyoming Cowgirls beat Coppin State yesterday 3-0. They'll take on the University of Albany at 6:30 at the UniWyo gym. So the Cowgirls are 7-2 on the year. The Casper College volleyball team, and they've struggled this year. They're 2-14, but they'll have their home opener tonight at 6 p.m. taking on NJC from Sterling, Colorado. Then they'll play Miles City tomorrow afternoon. LCCC lost to NJC yesterday 3-0. So L-Trip is 5-12 on the year. High school cross country, Douglas with a meet today. 3 Cheyenne East, Cheyenne South, and Laramie in the Loveland meet today. Cheyenne Central will be in the Arvada West tournament meet in Colorado. Tomorrow, Natrona will be in the Sheridan meet. Yesterday in Lander, it was Lexi Longhurst of Kelly Walsh winning the girls' race and Trey Swalstead of Worland winning the boys' race. And that's it in sports. Safe travels to everyone going everywhere.
Okay, so you did mention something that I'd asked you about yesterday with the UW game. Do you watch it or listen to it? Or do you just open up the news tomorrow and find out?
You ever see how people are looky-loos
Yes.
about like disasters and train wrecks and stuff?
Yeah.
That's what I think it'll be about.
Okay. See, I would be, if I was a sports fan, I'd be one of those. Just tell me tomorrow what happened.
No.
I don't think I could watch.
They'll watch for a while and then drink more than they started before the game.
Well,
yeah.
at least there's a lot of drinking going on.
Of course, yeah.
Have a great weekend,
Yeah,
Frank.
you
Thank
too.
you. Let's Wake Up Wyoming.